Well, hello, everybody. I am Tiffany Harlick, and this is a workshop on what to look at in your beehive after you have installed your new nucleus or your new colony. I have been teaching online for 5 years at universities and also just through my own private practice. And I do offer replays, but this is the first time that 100% of people are not here and are watching the replay. So if you have questions, just let me know in the email and I will get this sent out to you guys. But hopefully you can watch this on your own time and just enjoy the show. So let's see, let's hit present here. So you've installed your bees. So now what? Now what? It's like they gave you the baby and they're waiting on you, like, what are you going to do with this baby that you're holding and watching? So, we're going to talk about how to conduct your first few hive inspections. We're going to look at some frames of what healthy fruit, brood and food and comb look like in your colonies. We're going to talk about feeding a little bit. I'm going to show you some frames and discuss how to tell if the queen is doing her job or not. And then what to do if something seems off, right? And we'll close up with just some tools for tracking the hive health over time. So, how to conduct your first few hive inspections. So this is presuming that all of your bees are in the box where they're going to live on your apiary, right? That your hives are level, but also tilted just a little bit up so that water would run out the entrance if there was to be a water buildup. Um, let's see, we also have when to open the hive. So time of day is important, weather is important, and then when, if you're going to over inspect or under inspect, right? Like that is another important thing to consider. So time of day, you want to inspect usually between 10 and 2. And so around 10 o'clock, most of the foragers have gone out. So you are approaching the hive at a time when most of the foragers are already out. And so you want to be aware that not all of the bees are going to be there. So you're not getting the full picture. You're just looking at the colony as the foragers are out. And I like this time of day because um, you're not dealing with so many bees, right? Like you're just kind of seeing what is on the frames and you're learning how to read the frames and how to assess them. If your work or home life doesn't allow for that and you have to check first thing in the morning, well, that's fine too. You're just going to have a lot more bees at home. And oppositely, if you're checking later in the evening, the bees have already had a really, long day and they tend to be a little bit moodier at the end of the day in my colonies. And so for me, I prefer to check between 10 and 2. The weather needs to be good, nice, sunshiny day. Some cloud cover is fine, but if it is rainy or if the barometric pressure has dropped, or if the storms are coming, the bees are game to that, and that is not an ideal time to be checking them. They do tend to be more aggressive during those times. And then, as you're checking the bees, just moving calmly and confidently and breathing and going slow, that is going to be the ticket to keeping the airwaves under control, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to go through today. Again, after you've installed your bees, you want to wait 4 to 7 days. You don't want to get in there and mess with them. Um, they have already had a long journey. They have already been tussled around. And so you just want to let them set and then check in about 4 to 7 days and see how they are orienting to their new space. If you're opening too soon, it can just disrupt this already delicate process. And then once you're inside, it's another thing to just learn how to go slow, hold the frame so that you don't accidentally roll them over your queen and squish her while you're inspecting that the first couple of times. So here's a little video, right? Like for people that haven't inspected at all, you're going to want to use a little bit of smoke first at the entrance. You're going to observe the entrance first, and then you're going to take your lid off, do a puff of smoke at the entrance, and then on the top of your colony. Some people are in top bars. This is a Langstroth box, but you want to give them a little spit of a smoke first, and then you will hear a tone change, and you will also hear the bees running down to the bottom of the hive. My teacher, Les Crowder, says to be a gentle Godzilla. So it's kind of like us watching the minute clock on, or the minute hand on a clock. we know it's moving, but we can't really tell that it's moving. So if we would, as beekeepers, would just stand behind the hive and go really slow, the bees aren't going to be as agitated. We're just like a big white slow cloud that has entered. We are creating shadow. You'll notice that they behave differently when we create a shadow over them versus when they're in the light. I like the idea of slow beekeeping, right? But I also like to call it slow fast. And what I mean by that is go slow, but move with a purpose, right? Move with a purpose, know what you're in there for, get in, get out as slowly and efficiently as possible. Some beekeepers you'll see don't use gloves at all. I still use gloves. Okay, so I'm in my 5th year of beekeeping. I have not used gloves before. I have had a tolerance over the last 5 years where the stings don't hurt and inflame and itch like they used to. The reason that some beekeepers suggest to not use gloves when you're inspecting is that it will make you a better beekeeper in terms of going slow, not squishing bees, not being a bull in a china cabinet, or, all of those things. So it's up to you. I always wear a veil. I always use smoke when possible, unless there's a burn ban situation going on. And I do still use gloves, mostly because I just don't want my hands to get swollen while I have so much work going on with my hands right now, right? That's just me. Always check the weather before you visit and get done before dusk. So what you're going to bring with you each time is what I just said, right? Your protective gear, your smoker, make sure you have fuel and lighter. I use shavings from the feed store and some extra dried herbs, or sometimes I like to do like a little sage bundle or something that's kind of herbal and infused. That's just me. The bees don't care. You can get, of course, some dried sticks. You want to make sure that you have some kind of box with fuel and you're not just relying on the environment to give you fuel, because if it has been wet or if the fuel, if it's not super dry fuel, it's not going to ignite and stay lit. So I always have a bucket of shavings, cow patties, sticks, stuff like that in my car. You definitely want to have a hive tool with you and either a notebook, or if you make video notes on your phone, that's fine too. Some people like to buy frame holders. Some people like to use turkey feathers or bee brushes. The bees don't like them and they get stuck in there. So I tend to not use them, although I did need one recently when I was doing a removal inside of a tractor. They were just all on the window and wouldn't get off. And I used a little brush along, with my hand to get them off of the window. Sometimes you might need some extra sugar syrup with you so that you have it with you if needed. You don't have to go back in, make it, and come back out and disrupt the hive a second time. So what are we looking for when we're talking about colony health? We want a strong colony, which means that they have a lot of bees in there, big number of bees. We want to look for a specific organized brood pattern. This is a solid patch of capped brood. She's going to lay in kind of a spiral, and you're going to get this nice football shape, or some beekeepers call it a rainbow shape. Where she's laying eggs in this fashion. So they're going to also hatch in that fashion, right? These are going to hatch first, and then the next ones, and then the next ones. So it's going to kind of look like this rotating spiral, right? Of where they have just hatched and it'll be empty again. You want to see plenty of worker bees that are tending to the brood, that are on the frame. You want to see that they are drawing comb out, that they're building new, fresh, white comb. You want to see that they are storing pollen and nectar. And at this point where we are in West Texas, we are on a huge nectar flow. So there's a ton of nectar, open nectar, that's already starting to be capped and have a honey harvest early. Just to note that if bees are bringing in pollen, you'll see them on their little hind legs and their pollen pants, right? They call them pollen pants. And you'll see all different colors, yellows, oranges, reds. But if they're bringing in that pollen, it's a good indicator that they are feeding their young and that they are queen right. You want to train your eye to see eggs standing upright in the cell, and I'll show you a couple images of that later. You're going to see some white C-shaped larva that is curled around in the bottom of this cell that has nice juicy royal jelly in it. The bees should sound calm. They shouldn't be high-pitched, agitated. You'll notice the vibe, right? And the hive should smell like, kind of honey and wax. It should smell sweet. It shouldn't smell sour, right? So that could be an indicator that something is off. Yeah, and you want to see limited or no signs of pests, and I have some pictures of that for you guys too. So recognizing that healthy brood pattern is going to tell you whether your queen is working or not. We want to just look at some of these pictures. That looks like kind of a replicated slide. So if you're new and you're looking for the queen, right? Yes, she has this circular shaped thorax here. Yes, she has an elongated abdomen. The wings are the same size as the worker bees, but they look shorter because her abdomen is longer. And honestly, the thing that the way I find her is usually her legs. And no one ever taught me that. That's just something that I see. Like her legs look different. They look fatter to me. They move differently than the other bees' legs. And you'll see that in some of the videos. So just a quick little tidbit on honeybee math so that you can know if you are queenless, how long ago did you lose your queen and how long will it take your colony to get queen right again? You can tell all of this just by looking at the frame, right? So the honeybee's life cycle, the drone, right, the boy bees, it's going to take him longest to hatch, and he's going to live for a couple of months. The queen is going to be the shortest to hatch, only 16 days, and she's going to live to 5+ years. Some beekeepers requeen every year, just like with chickens when they're laying eggs in the beginning, they do really, really good, and then they kind of taper off. Same with the queens, right? So before the bees even get a chance to taper off, a lot of beekeepers will requeen. That is not my practice. It is a practice. And then the workers take 21 days to hatch. So if you're seeing little tiny baby larvae down here, you know about how long it's going to be before you get more bees that are hatching and coming out and you have a working force. The bees also start out all in as house bees, as nurse bees, and they go through their life, and each age they graduate to a new job. So it's the foragers are the oldest bees, right? They're at the end of their life, the ones that are out flying and bringing back in the food. So this is our queen, right? These are her legs. You can see it looks like her abdomen is her abdomen is longer. It looks like her queens are shorter, her wings, but they're not. They're the same as these guys. It's just that she has a longer abdomen, and you can see this nice round thorax. So that's what she's looks like. This is her retinue that's around her. They're not letting her move right now. They're like, hey, lay an egg right there, and that's what she's trying to do. Okay. In the next one, it's kind of the same. This one has a little red dot on it. We're recording this in 2025, and this is a blue year. So you'll see blue dots on the queens that were this year queens. And the way to tell what year it was with colors, if you have painted queens, the saying is, what you raise good bees. So white, yellow, red, green, blue, and it starts with 0 through 5 is the blue, and then 6 starts over again, 7, 8, 9, 0. So sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. What you raise good bees over and over again. So you can always tell what color it is. I should have a chart for that. Here's just one last one of a queen and her retinue, all of the little uh, attendants that are helping keep her clean and informing her decisions and telling her, hey, we want a boy bee here, or we want a girl bee here, or here's some sugar water. This is what the drones look like. They're significantly different than the queen in that they have these huge eyes that they've developed to be able to go on their mating flights and see the queen. Here's a drone in comparison to a worker. They're just quite different. It's very common to think that the drone is the queen when you're starting out looking at the frames. Here's another one just showing their big old eyes, right? They don't have stingers, so you can hold them. This is just a frame. Like when you're pulling out your frame, you want to see a bunch of bees on the frame. You don't want to see just a whole lot of empty space. The bees are going to be around the brood, the nest, But as you're puffing smoke, they're going to go run and get a sip of honey, right? They're going to engorge themselves on nectar, on honey, because they may be thinking like, hey, we might be having to leave and vacate. This place is on fire. The smoke is going to mask the alarm pheromone, so they won't attack or sting or things like this, ideally. But it can also create that sensation of, oops, we might be needing an emergency exit. And so that smoke can actually force them to go eat as well. This is a frame that has a bunch of capped brood on it. Okay, so all of this is capped brood. You can see all of the little worker bees there. Bonus points if you can find the queen. Yeah, it looks like there might be a little bit of pollen in there. Hard to tell from this angle, but that's what capped brood looks like of worker bees. Not of drones, but of worker bees. This is what the larva looks like. So you can see out here is where the eggs are. So she's just laid these, but it's been a couple of days since she laid this size, and a couple of more days since she laid this size, right? And a couple of more days, and then finally it gets capped. And so these are all worker larvae, and then pupa, and then they're waiting, to uncap themselves to be born, to be baby bees. These are what the eggs look like. It's really hard to see sometimes when you're out there and you've got your veil on. And so you can hold it with the sun behind you, the sun shining in, and sometimes you can see it that way. Sometimes people take a picture or a video and see it that way. Okay, and then this is a frame of open nectar. You can see it's like nice and clear liquid in there. If you were to shake it, it would splat nectar out everywhere. And they are going back in and capping it. And so that's what capped nectar looks like. So they're going to evaporate it and turn it into honey, right? And this is a frame of capped honey. So if you have more than 75% of this frame capped, it's usually okay to harvest. And we'll use a, oh my gosh, what is that little tool called? We'll use a refractometer. We'll put a little honey in the refractometer to make sure that it's the right level of viscosity so that it won't ferment. And that's a whole other class. But you can see, look, there's a little drone right there, and the rest are worker bees. Maybe that's a little drone, right? These are all worker bees. So capped honey looks very different than capped brood. This again is open nectar and capped honey, right? There's a couple of different colors of it. Sometimes you'll get different colors in different flavors, even on the same frame. So it's very normal to have a variety of colors throughout your colonies. Um, these are pictures of capped queen cells. And so sometimes if your queen isn't working right, like if she's not laying or in enough quantity, if she's having a hard time struggling, the bees will do a supersedure and they will kill her and start a new queen. And they will also swarm. So this time of year, you see a lot of swarms going on in the spring, and these are swarm cells. So these are cups that they will practice and feed royal jelly and try to make into a queen. They can only do that if they have an egg that is less than 3 days old, and if they have the right nutrition to put in there, and if they have nurse bees to take care of it, right? But once they do that little queen cup, they can draw it out into this peanut shape. And they'll do several, but the first queen that hatches usually wins. So she'll engage in matricide. The queens will fight each other, or she will go around and kill the other ones, pinch off in their queen cells. So only one queen is going to win. If they are swarming, right, the old queen, the original queen, is going to leave with most of the colony, and the new queen is going to stay behind, and then she'll start her mating flight and go through that process of regeneration of the superorganism. So if you see queen cells right now, as you've just installed, something is probably up. Are they trying to swarm already? Did you buy a nuke that had a queen cell in it already? That could be a question for the person that you bought it from. Um, did something happen to your queen and they're trying to make an emergency new queen? So if you see these types of cells, they're telling you something, and we need to ask some more questions. Okay, shifting into pests a little bit, if you see this kind of crusty spider webby stuff, This is a sign that your hive has been infested. And sometimes once it gets to this point, the ants can get in there and start to clean up. This is a sign of the wax moths, and this is not why the colony failed, but it is a sign that they have failed. It's kind of like looking at vultures and roadkill and saying, oh, that deer died because of the vulture. Well, no, the vulture's there doing cleanup based on some other accident, right? This is some gross frames of wax moths too. There's the little worm larva of the wax moth, and you can see they really do some damage into the frames. So this is well beyond repair. You wouldn't try to save these frames. You wouldn't save the wax. You would just give this to your chickens or the fire ants. This is what wax moths look like. They can create these grooves in the board, and they get really hard and crusty. They're just gross. So if you see these, you have a problem that is likely well past due. See the little crusties and gross things, right? That's a clear sign of the wax moth invasion. This is a little bee being born. There's nothing wrong with this. As you're inspecting your colonies and you have a lot of brood because your producer gave you some frames with a lot of brood in it, as you pull them out, you might see something like this where the bee is just coming out for the first time. It's chewing around the edges and it's trying to, just free itself and start its little bee journey, its little bee life. Okay, I probably blew this photo up a little too big, it seems, but this is a varroa mite. So if you see a varroa mite on your bees, right, that's fairly normal because of the large amount of infestations. Out here, we have, in our colonies, we have bees that have what they call mite biting behavior. And so their genetics are such that they have evolved to bite the mites off of each other. I have seen that in my colonies. You might see that in your colonies where a bee bites the mite off of another bee. That's great. That's awesome genetics. You want to let everybody know, you want to brag about that if you see that, right? But these mites, in comparison, if we were to think about it like on us, it's like the size of a softball. Just it's like a big old tick, right? Sucking blood and fat off of that bee. This a huge size, and they can have several. So a lot of beekeepers will issue treatments and do mite counts to handle this. Where I am, I have not needed to do that. So that is not my area of expertise. Of course, you need to know about it because you need to know if you're having a problem and if you should be measuring and you should be doing mite counts. Some beekeepers would say you should do those anyway, whether you plan to treat or not. And that's up to you, right? That's your apiary. You can manage it how you want to manage it. There are several different strategies and techniques for measuring your mite load or your mite count. And as well, I'll save that for another talk. Okay. Another pest to be aware of is this little black beetle. It's called the small hive beetle. So you'll see it as SHB in the literature. And so this is just another sign that the colony is weak, it is not thriving, and it's not taking care of itself as you would hope it to take care of itself. And it can cause different kinds of diseases. So you want to make sure that you have lots of bees, that you have big, thriving, healthy colonies, and you won't see a lot of these pests. Okay, so should you feed your bees, right? Should you feed your bees? In our area, I feel like even though we're on a flow right now, yes, you should feed your bees, and you should feed them 1-to-1 sugar water syrup, and you could refill that gallon, I don't know, once a week. How fast are they going through it? Because what you're trying to do is help them get established in a whole new area. They haven't foraged here yet, and we've had a lot of rain. So even though things are blooming and it looks like a beautiful spring with lots of floral out, the rain has washed out a lot of the nectar. So even though it looks beautiful, the bees may not have something to eat where you are, right? So your first month, go ahead and feed them, help them get reestablished, help them just start them out strong. If you get to a point where you're feeding sugar water that they're using as honey instead of letting them forage locally, you're making funny honey. You're not making honey anymore. You're not making honey at all. You're making sugar water. You're force feeding them, right? So you need to know when to let up on that. so that you're not making funny honey and that you're only feeding this 1-to-1 sugar syrup water because it gives them extra carbs, it gives them extra sugar, it gives them energy to get out there and forage, it gives them what they need to be able to make wax and build new comb. You might change that ratio later in the year for different reasons. So you need to know why you're feeding, you need to know what your goal is, and you need to know what feeding will actually do. So there's tons of research on this out there, and every beekeeper has a different opinion, and you will find your way. Um, so we want to also talk about pollen patties and natural nectar flow. We want to, let's see, okay, so here's a feeder that you would put inside, right? If you were doing a Langstroth box, you would put that inside. That replaces one frame and it holds a little better than a gallon. They also come in 2-frame feeders and they hold a little better than 2 gallons of your sugar water. You always want to put this on the outside. So I put it in slot 1. Some people put it in slot 8, but you're never going to put that feeder like in the middle of the brood, right? You want it on the outside. And even if there's a couple of empty frames between that feeder and your brood nest, that's okay. You want that feeder on the outside. And that way, you know where it is when you're checking the colony, you know where your feeder is every single time. And if you ever add a box right up top, you can still just kind of slide the top box off or slide even just the top and the inner cover over a little bit and only expose that feeder on the far left side and pour your sugar water in and close them back up. So if you know you're just going out to feed and not do a full inspection, you know where that is. There are also feeders that you can put at the entrance on the outside of the hive, and this works for Langstroth, but it can also work for our top bar hives. You don't even need this little plastic thing. You can just get 3 sticks and make a kind of a triangle and put your jar of sugar water upside down on top of your triangle, and they can get up under there and feed from it. So when I'm doing that, I'll take just like the jar of a lid and put a nail in it and poke holes with a nail. And so I have several holes all the way through. And then we'll put, this, obviously we'll put the water, sugar water in like that. We'll flip it upside down and we'll put it right on those sticks or in the feeder. This is pollen. I experimented with pollen once my first year and I didn't like it. It caused a lot of pests and diseases. You would do it later in the year. The purpose of that is it's building brood, it's giving them protein, it's giving them a different source of food than we need right now in my area, in my opinion, right? If I were to experiment with pollen again, I would not feed it inside the hive. I have managed other people's apiaries that have used pollen inside the hive, and it just causes pest diseases, gross stuff in our area where I'm managing. So I would experiment with open feeding pollen outside of the hive and just saying, hey, if you guys want this for a snack, let's see what you think. Um, so how do you know if the queen is doing her job, right? This is nice. This is a big frame of full of capped brood. She has done her job. This is nice. This is shows that rainbow football shape. And you can see, yes, she's done her job here and there's a little bit of honey on the outside. That's great too. This is when we might be a little bit more concerned when it's spotty like this, because what you would expect to see is that one layer around the ring is starting to hatch out, and you'll notice, that shape just changed, but it's still that football shape as one, I guess, round hatches out and the next one comes in. This one is just kind of all over the place. And so we wonder if she's running out of eggs, if she's at the end of her life, if she's unhealthy for some reason, if there's something going on with the wax that's unhealthy, right? Wax does not detox. So any chemicals that have been put in your wax at all, right, in its former life will continue to build up and have a synergistic effect and potentially causing pesticide die-off in your colony, even if you have never treated. That absolutely happened to me my first year, and so just be aware of that. You want to know your bee producer, know where your frames are coming from, and especially if you are trying to do chemical-free, treatment-free, that's important that you have wax frames that have not been treated, Or if you don't know and can't find out, that you rotate them out so that you're not just building up unhealthy wax that's building chemicals in it over the years, right? Okay, so you don't have to see your queen, but you do need to be able to read, has she been there? Is there little eggs? Is there little larvae? Is there a nice full thing of brood? You need to look for signs that she's there and queen right. So if something seems off, if it smells funky, if it sounds funky, if they're acting crazy, if they're acting like they're drunk, you want to know that and get back with your mentor and help troubleshoot what to do. You need to have critical thinking and know all of the possibilities. Every time I get in the colonies, they still surprise me. I still go in thinking I have a game plan and I'll have to change it, right? This is why having more than one colony is really helpful, especially for beginner beekeepers, because you'll need to trade and equalize resources. Inevitably, one of your colonies is going to be stronger than the other. And if that weaker colony starts to fail, you have resources right there ready to help both colonies out, right? Whereas if you just had one and it started to fail, that may be it for you and your investment. So I really encourage people to start with at least 2, 3 hives if they can. Um, and then also to be able to come up with multiple game plans for when it's not what you think, so that you don't have to keep opening the hive over and over and over. If you can take pictures and share those with your mentor or share those within the group, that's really helpful too. Okay, so um, good notes make good beekeepers. I sometimes I'll draw my colony, like the pallets out on a piece of paper and just write what's going on. Sometimes I'll take a pencil, not Sharpie because it will fade, but a pencil and actually write on the box or on the inner cover and say the date, what's going on. Is it queen right? QR. Is it queenless? QL. Does it have good food, good brood, eggs? Is it a heavy population? Is it weak? What's the weather like that day? What's the entire health of the whole apiary as a whole? Is everybody going down? Is everybody going up? Is everybody bringing in nectar? What's happening with the bloom cycle, right? What's going on? Did my neighbors spray, their cotton fields? Like what is happening here? And you want to develop a rhythm, whether you're writing something down physically or just taking like a video note on your phone. You need to have some kind of note of what you think happened in the apiary so that when you go back, you know what you're looking for the next time. And so this is going to give you a rhythm. It's going to give you long-term success. It's going to help you make informed decisions as you go back in there throughout the year. But most of you guys that bought this workshop and are watching the replay are just getting started. There is so much to learn about beekeeping. And the most important thing is that you continue to have fun with it. The way you're going to have fun with it is if you feel safe in your suit, that you go out with confidence, that you breathe when it gets a little bit loud, that you move slow, that you set your intention to be a good steward of God's creatures, right? All of these things. The bees are going to throw you curveballs, and a lot of times, some of the biggest mistakes we can make or why colonies fail is us checking on them too much, right? A lot of times they'll just correct themselves if we'll leave them alone and be patient. But the reason we want to get in and check is if we see something wrong early enough, we can do something about it, often through equalizing resources, bringing in another frame of brood, realizing we're queenless and needing to get another queen in, realizing they're about to swarm and that we need to do a split, right? Or not, or just allow them to swarm. So as long as you know, right, the life cycle of the bee and what they're about to do, in normal conditions, you can usually think with them and kind of get in sync with the natural rhythm and then start to manage based on what kind of decisions you want to make for your apiary. Okay, so the next workshop I'm going to do is called the Dance of the Honeybee and how your bees communicate through dance. There's 4 or 5 different dances that we're going to go over. Of course, the main one is the waggle one that everybody likes to talk about. But what are they saying? How are they communicating? What are they conveying by these dances at these different angles, at these different times? So that that is our presentation for tonight. Thank you for being here. I'm going to pause the recording and come back for questions.